This is a lecture on causation and two of Aquinas' arguments about it. There are two ways to talk about causation. There's object causation and event causation. Suppose you see a broken window in a baseball. You could correctly say that the ball caused the broken window. Both the ball and the window are objects. It makes sense to talk about causation that way. You could also describe the same situation this way. The throwing of the ball caused the breaking of the window. Both of those things are events. You could talk about it either way. It's awkward but correct to say that Clara Barton was a cause of the American Red Cross. It's also appropriate to say that the failure of the South Fork Dam caused the Johnstown flood. The first case was object causation. The second is event causation. Notice that we could re-describe either case in the other terms. However you talk about causation as objects, as happening between objects or between events, causation is transitive. Here's what that means. If A is a cause of B and B is a cause of C, then A has to be a cause of C. In general, a relationship is transitive when the following argument is valid. A relates to B, B relates to C, therefore A relates to C. You remember what it means to say an argument is valid. The premises couldn't be true while the conclusion isn't. So A relating to B and B relating to C guarantees that A relates to C if the relationship is transitive. For example, the relationship is taller than is transitive. If Anne is taller than Barb and Barb is taller than Carla, then Anne has to be taller than Carla. Is the mother of is not a transitive relation. If Anne is the mother of Barb and Barb is the mother of Carla, it doesn't follow that Anne is the mother of Carla. In fact, Anne isn't the mother of Carla, she's the grandmother of Carla. Think about the relation is the ancestor of. If Anne is the ancestor of Barb and Barb is the ancestor of Carla, is it required that Anne is the ancestor of Carla? It is. What about the relationship has the same nickname as? If Anne has the same nickname as Barb and Barb has the same nickname as Carla, does that require that Anne have the same nickname as Carla? Well, no, Barb could have two different nicknames, one in common with Anne and another in common with Carla. They could all share the same nickname, but that's not enough to make the argument valid. It's not enough to make the relationship transitive because A doesn't have to have the same nickname as C. By the way, our arrow means is a cause of. So even if there are multiple causes of some object or some event, we say that one of them is a cause. So when I say that A causes B, I just mean A is one of possibly many causes of B. Of course, if A is a cause of B and B is a cause of C, that guarantees by transitivity that A is a cause of C. But A isn't the only cause of C. At the very least, B is another cause of C. Here's Aquinas' no loops argument. Aquinas argues that in the whole complex causal history of the universe, there are no loops. If you keep track of everything that ever was, all the causes those things had and all that they led to, no matter how much you zoom in, you'll never find a loop. Here's his argument. Premise 1, nothing can cause itself. Premise 2, causation is transitive. Conclusion, so there are no loops. Try to convince yourself, pause the video and try to convince yourself that that argument is valid. You can see it by using reductio ad absurdum. Remember how that works. Assume the premises are true and the conclusion is false. So let's assume that nothing can cause itself and that causation is transitive. And we'll assume that there are loops. Take, for example, this loop on the right. Pretend that A causes B and B causes C, C causes D, and D causes E, and E causes A. If A causes B and B causes C, then by transitivity, premise 2, A must cause C. But if C causes D, then A must cause D too. And the same way, A must cause E. If A causes E and E causes A, then by transitivity, A must cause itself. But that contradicts premise one. Premise one says nothing causes itself. So we know that these premises can't be true while the conclusion is false. The argument is valid at least. That doesn't mean the conclusion has to be true. It does mean that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be. So, if you don't like the conclusion, you have to pick a premise and criticize it. But why should we accept premise one? Why should we think that nothing can cause itself? Doesn't, for example, rain cause itself? And doesn't life lead to life? And can't something like unhappiness cause unhappiness? Etc. Here's the nothing can cause itself argument from Aquinas again. Premise one, causes precede their effects, that is, they come before their effects in time. Premise two, nothing can precede itself. No event can happen before it happens. No object can exist before it exists. Therefore, nothing can cause itself. If causes have to come before their effects, and nothing can come before itself, then nothing can be the cause of itself. Convince yourself that argument is valid. The premises seem plausible. There is a problem with it, you'll agree in the end, but for right now, it seems plausible. But what about our counterexamples? What would Aquinas say about rain and life and unhappiness? I think he'd give the same response to all the counterexamples, so just consider rain, for example. Rain is a cause of puddles, and puddles are a cause of evaporation. Evaporation is a cause of clouds in the sky, which is a cause of rain. So, how is that not a loop? How is that not rain causing itself, Aquinas? Aquinas will say the only reason that seems like a loop is that you've underdescribed the events. Rain today leads to puddles tonight, leads to evaporation, clouds, and rain tomorrow. It's not rain today that caused rain today. Rain today might cause rain tomorrow, which might cause rain the next day, but there's no rain event or object that causes itself to be. The same for unhappiness. My unhappiness now might lead someone else to be rude to me, which causes more unhappiness later. But it's not one event of unhappiness causing itself. What all this means when you put it together is that, according to Aquinas at least, in the whole complex causal history of the universe, no matter how closely you zoom in, there aren't going to be any loops in there. Causation always happens in a line. That's the important takeaway for Aquinas. So, when Aquinas argues for the existence of God, which he will do, it's not going to be a God that caused itself. It's not going to be a God that brought itself into existence. Aquinas thinks nothing can cause itself. God, for Aquinas, when he goes on to argue for it, will be the uncaused first cause.